Hello, everyone, and welcome to Foundations of Reading. This week's topic is decoding and VCe syllables. We're going to go through these lessons really fast as a pre-warning, and I encourage everyone to come to class on Tuesday and Thursday from 3 to 5 to get deeper into these topics. All right, the first thing, this is a review from the end of last class, is a smooth reading where we want to read with accuracy and the proper emotion and with a good speed, a good pace. And I encourage you to read this before class where we will practice or practice it by yourself. All right, so we've already talked about what is a CVC syllable, and it is a syllable with a short vowel sound. And we can pick these syllables out when we see one vowel and we see one consonant at the end of the syllable. It's okay to have two consonants because at least there's one at the end. So we might look at some words as a review and say, well, which ones are CVCs? Well, chimp, yes. Tramp, yes. Need, no. That's a long E, need. Egg, it's good. Lake, no. And so are no, because that's a long vowel sound, A-E-I-O-U. So what we're going to talk about in this first bit is really how to take the longer words and apply the strategy given to us in our textbook to break these words into pieces. So I would challenge you to perhaps put this on pause and look for any of the long words in here that have multiple syllables that you can break into small pieces. Give yourself a second with that. For example, if you had the word absent, you could mark the vowels and split the consonants to create absent. It's easier to read, right? You think it happens in your mind, but if we practice it this way, it'll make it easier to happen in our minds. So we have this word too, Manhattan. And we split those consonants and we get three simple words that we can easily recognize. Many long words are made up of short words that we already know. We just have to put those together. So most of the time we divide between the consonants, but as we go along in the lessons, we'll talk about some of the more irregular words that or letter combinations that we'll run into. So they have a list here. We have some of these words in our quiz. We won't give all the answers too quick, but take your time and divide them up into syllables, and the same for this one. When you're looking at your slides, you have time to do this before I show the answers. This again is the strategy that we're given in our book for looking for decoding an unknown word or for figuring out an unknown word. It's like when we're reading in the context, we come across a word and we think, oh, does that make sense? That's a context clue. It's like, maybe it doesn't make sense. Let me look at this word more closely. Let me look for compound words. Let me look for prefixes or suffixes. Let me break this word into syllables. Well, how do I do that? I mark the vowels. I split the consonants. I sound out the syllables with some flexibility, and I refigure out the word. And quite often, that new word you come to that didn't make sense the first time will make sense here because you've taken the time to say, wait, I don't think I said the right word there. They help us practice this in our lessons, and we will do this in class. So again, read this one before. We won't read it here with some smooth reading. Like, think like you're Sade, right? So, all right, so we'll read this one in class together. Read it over before class. Break the larger words up into their pieces and look at, are these CVCs? Do they have a short vowel sound, right? That's the first lessons that they teach us here. And so then the next lesson that we'll go into and we'll discuss in class is prefixes and suffixes are longer words. So we have these multi-syllable words, and some of them have prefixes or suffixes, and some of them don't. But if you are familiar with the prefixes and suffixes, it will help you figure out a lot of the longer words in English, because many of the longer words are made with a root word that has added prefixes or suffixes. And if we know the meanings of all of those parts of the word, then we can decipher most words. So they have a document of the day here for you to read. And in this document, there are multiple words that have either prefixes or suffixes. And we'll talk about this in class, but the first challenge would be to say, well, which ones have a prefix or a suffix? One such word would be unsuccessful. So we know the root word is success, but if I say unsuccessful, I have changed the meaning of this root word with the prefix and the suffix, right? And in that document, there are multiple words. So they have a thing here. We'll go over class. Let me just ask us to kind of separate those into the root word, the prefix, and the suffix. The prefixes and suffixes we'll be talking about are un, dis, full, ness, and miss to start with, right? And we'll talk about the meaning of each of these suffixes. But in truth, there are many prefixes and suffixes in English. This is not the complete list. There's a lot of Latin suffixes that we use in English. There's more sophisticated prefixes that we might use. There's a whole big world of prefixes and suffixes. These are just some of the most common, so I encourage you to look that over before class. Right? And so then they move on and they help us examine with some words just these prefixes and suffixes to separate longer words and say, hey, wait, that's an ing ending, or hey, wait, that's a un, that means not. So this has changed the meaning of the word. And as I am a reader, want to be more mindful of this. And they help us to really look at these as we will in class. Then there's another smooth reading for us to do. And then we'll do a little bit of a review of what are the CVC syllables, talk about our short vowel keywords, we'll classify some words based upon the sounds that we hear, because when you hear the sound, that helps you spell the word better. And we will look at some more prefixes and suffixes in many different words and different word parts. We'll do some spelling checks. We'll do these within our quizzes. So tell me how that goes this week when you listen to the words and then you spell them. And we will divide some more syllables up. We'll have a good bit of practice. And then the last thing that we will get to this week is VCE words. So we'll talk about the consonant vowel consonant pattern, and then we'll compare it to some of the words that might be in a short document of the day like this. So we see the word space, we say, well, that ends in an E. That's that silent E. That's that VCE pattern. That's going to give me the long vowel, right? And so even if the word doesn't end in an E, that E that is a vowel, a consonant, and then a silent E will affect this previous vowel, and it will make it have a long O sound. Or here, this E will make this A have a long A sound. And so that's what we'll talk about in the final bit of the lesson this week coming up. We'll also talk about the letter X. X has two sounds, so it's a very unique letter. And then we'll talk about how we can change a short vowel sound to a long vowel sound by adding that E. So we could have mad or made, pet or Pete, bit or bite, mop or mope, or cub or cube, right? So this E is like the second most important pattern in English. Okay, so and they give you some word parts here, and they ask you to think of some words that might include these word parts, because often that silent E can come at the end of a two-syllable word. It's very common at the end of two-syllable words that we will have a short vowel, then a long vowel sound. They will also talk about, just for a brief second, the quirky U, the irregular U. So we have a word like fuse, like you, right? You hear that? Fuse. Or we have a word like rule, wool. So when we are playing with the U's, we do have to be flexible when we talk about this VCE sound, because like we talked about at the very beginning, in English, some letters can make more than one sound, right? So fuse or rule, both of a U. All right, in class, I'm going to say some words and you're going to practice them out, just isolating the vowel sounds and if they're short or they're long, because this will help us in all of the spelling rules that we talk about in the future, because we're only at the beginning of these lessons and they don't get difficult, but you need to know the short and the long vowel to understand the rest of the lessons, right? So we'll have some more examples of these. We'll talk about our CVC patterns. We'll differentiate between the VCE and this VCE. We'll still practice our decoding a little bit more. We'll talk about how when we have blends of letters, when we're separating consonants, we have to keep those together. And we'll also talk about how the silent E is treated when it comes in the first syllable of a word. So we have a good bit that we will cover on Tuesday and Thursday of next week. I encourage you to look through the slides, to read them yourself, to read the different articles or smooth readings. And then we will, just as a precursor, we'll put this lesson 8 in here, and we hope to get to this, which is the dropping of the E.